So greetings to everybody and welcome to the candidate for the position of Judge of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, Mr. Ivan Volodymyrovich Nazarov. Mr. Nazarov serves as Deputy President of the National Agency for Higher Education Quality Assurance and has been allowed to participate in the competitive selection by the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. The advisory group of experts is sitting in full composition. The interview will be moderated by the secretary of the advisory group of experts, Mr. Yaroslav Romaniuk, and I'm passing the floor to him. Please, Yaroslav.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Ivan Volodymyrovich, dear colleagues, members of the public. The AGE members are present here today. The chairman of the AGE, Mr. Alex Zaller, in online Zoom meeting, and AGE members Ms. Hanna Sukhotska, Ms. Marina Connor, Ms. Oksana Vasilchenko are present. The deputy of the AGE member Vasil Shakun is also here because Ms. Natalia Kuznetsova recused. Please note that AGE deputies are present: Ms. Thomas Griffiths, Mr. Richard Barrett, Mr. Marek Zubik, and Mr. Volodymyr Kuzmenko, and me, AGE Secretary Yaroslav Romaniuk. Mr. Ivan Volodymyrovich, we have had time and we accumulated data and information about you as a candidate for the position of the Judge of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine through the prism of your integrity. Thank you so much for your communication with the Secretary of the AGE. Thank you for presenting the answers to the question posed. We obtained a lot of positive information about you, but there are still some moments to be clarified. The goal of this interview is to give you the possibility to relieve and clarify any doubts regarding your good moral character. I want to state that the candidate may not provide information, documents, or other materials during the interview if the advisory group requested their provision earlier and the candidate did not provide them within the specified period, or if the candidate could provide them on their own initiative earlier. Just because we haven't had any time for their analysis and comparison of the available information. So today you presented the complementary documents for the fourth round of the documents, and we will return to this issue because the advisory group may make an exception if it determines that such an exception is justified. I would also like to inform you that the interview is being recorded and streamed live on the AGE resources as well as the website of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine. I call upon the AGE members and you, Mr. Nazarov, to limit the use of sensitive data and limited access information on live air. So if there is a need to discuss such type of data, we will restrict the streaming and we'll discuss it here in private. Dear candidate, I would also to draw your attention to the fact that the duration of the interview is approximately 1 hour. I ask you to be laconic and concise and respect the time limit for responding to a question up to 3 minutes. Some members of the AGE do not possess the knowledge of Ukrainian language. They are English speaking, so please, if you need, you have opportunity to use the headset with Ukrainian simultaneous translation. So use it if you need. At the end of the interview, the candidate may make a short closing statement of up to 5 minutes. Please respect the time limits. And now we're ready to start the interview. And I would like to start about the property issues. And we will discuss also the feasibility or non-feasibility to take into consideration your added information. The first question is, as the AGE has stated, in 2016, you bought Hyundai Accent car produced in 2006. Its cost is 86,100 hryvnias. As you have explained, the funds for it were provided by your parents. But, according to the State Register of Natural Persons Taxpayers, for the period from 1998 to 2005, your father's income constituted less than 49,000 hryvnias. As for your mother had no income. Today, you presented complimentary explanation and you stated that this is not correct information, that your mother had minimal but still a pension, and your father, since 2000 year, has a pension 18,000 hryvnias today, but before it was less. Also, you stated that we haven't taken into account that your father occupied different positions. So my question is, so what is the origin of the funds for the purchase of the vehicle? And when you were asked during the fourth round on the 27th of February why you didn't inform the AGE about this fact, and also you presented the documents today, why you haven't presented them before? If you talk about the pension, please present the document from the Pension Fund of Ukraine. If you say that your father occupied different positions, please give us the copy of the working experience. So please, this is your interest, because the goal of our interview is to give you an opportunity to clarify the evidence-based doubts that we have had. Thank you for your question. Dear members of the AGE, at first I would like to say sorry for the fact that I have sent only today some complimentary information, but as an explanation I would like to say that yesterday, as any candidate, I prepared myself for the interview and I paid attention to these numbers and I decided that it should be mentioned as it is an important issue. As for the car Hyundai, in 2006 it was bought. It was purchased by my parents. It was a gift for me. As for origin of funds, my parents have for such a gift, it is related to their professional activity and savings they had and they did during their professional activity. As I have already said, since 1974 my father has worked, and in the year 2000 he retired. but during his professional career, he had possibility to make some savings. My mother always worked since 1975. They both have background. My father has military background. My mom has economic background. And when my mom in 1991 stopped working and in 2005 she retired, it doesn't mean that they didn't have any savings. And when they gave this gift to me, they said that these were the savings and they wanted to present me such a gift. The AGE took the information for the incomes of your parents from the State Register of Natural Persons Taxpayers. If you think that this information isn't relevant, why you didn't take any statement and documents from the places where your mom and dad worked starting from 1975-1974 and to provide such documents to our group? It would give us possibility to evaluate such incomes and we would have done some preliminary estimates. Thank you for your question. I would explain myself. We understand that in that period it was the Soviet Union, and I was born in the period of the Soviet Union. As my father was a military serviceman, we moved in the period, and in the period since 1974 till 1991, when we moved to Ukraine, he worked in different countries: Mongolia, Latvia, Czech Republic, etc. So it is not possible to find out all the workplaces. And since 1991 till the year 2000, when your father retired, at first I asked my father, I asked him to help me to collect information about his retribution rate that years. My father said that he hasn't preserved such an information. He is not a military serviceman. Yeah, this is his first primary occupation, and he didn't give me any documents for confirmation of his incomes or about his savings for that period, since 1991 till 2004, and even after this period he didn't present me such documents. And have you addressed the organizations and places where he worked, for example, or you can offer us to ask these organizations? Thank you for your question. I don't think that being a natural person I can ask and I will receive the incomes of other people. Okay, and then the question, why you haven't asked us to get such an information for your father from his working places? Thank you for your question. And I would like to say that I'm sorry. I know that such practice exists and the complementary information can be presented. I mean, the presentation of ID codes, fiscal codes, etc. But unfortunately, I haven't done it. I tried to find out the details about it because the next question they again repeat the same. So in 5 years, in 2019 you bought a Ford Kuga vehicle for 298,900 hryvnias. And in your written answers, you explained that most of the money for the purchase of that car had been given by your parents. According to the State Register of Natural Persons Taxpayers, your father's income from the period 1998 to 1910 constituted 163,000 of Ukrainian hryvnias and something, minus the other car in 2006 and while your mother had no income. So specify sources of your parents' income for vehicle purchase. Thank you for your question. I would say that this is an error. In any case, I have no access to the information from the State Register of Natural Persons and Taxpayers as for my parents, but I know that even their pension is not reflected there, and I am confident in the fact that my father said truth to me when he said that he worked on different positions in both private and state sector, and he had retribution that should have been reflected in the register, but it wasn't there. About your question about the car, the purchase of this car was done based on the savings they had that had been formed during their professional activity life. And when we talk about the fact that these are remarkable sums of money, I had such question to my parents. I asked them to explain, and they told me about the fact that they couldn't give me the information how much funds did they have at that period. They couldn't provide me the information about the documents, how their savings had been formed, because during that period they didn't have any need to preserve such information because they were not public persons. They gave me all the complete information about what they sold to make savings to live after the retirement. But that's it. So yes, this car was bought with the help and assistance of my parents. Mr. Ivan Volodymyrovich, we don't have a goal to accuse you of something, but we have had doubts as for your integrity because we don't see the documented evidence to confirm your words. And this is your interest, this is your task to clarify all these doubts, having the documents from the working place of your parents. So your father and mother do not provide you with the information, then you can address these places. If this working place doesn't provide the information, address us. Why haven't you done all this? Why haven't you taken the efforts to convince us about the legality of these sources? Thank you for your question. Frankly speaking, I don't think that I would have been successful if I had addressed the Security Service of Ukraine or to the Ministry of the Internal Affairs of Ukraine for my father's income. So do we understand you correctly that your father worked in the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Security Service of Ukraine? Yes. Okay. Again, we have the next question. In the year 2013, you buy a Ford Kuga vehicle worth 390,000 hryvnias. In your written explanations, you specified that your parents had given you 70,000 hryvnias. And according to the State Register of Natural Persons Taxpayers, your father's income from 1998 to 2013 constituted 163,000 hryvnias. But from this sum, we should minus the funds given by your father to you to buy cars in 2006 and 2019. So, please specify the sources of your incomes for purchase of the car in 2013.
Thank you for the question. As I already said, they were accumulating savings up to 2000 when they were working as state officials. After that, my dad was working in the private sector. He was director of a private firm who was supplying equipment to ensure security equipment. So from 2003 until 2005 he was working there. There were some years when he was employed in the system of the internal affairs bodies. So when I asked my parents whether they had opportunity to help me like that with these serious sums, they assure me that the savings they got for the time of their professional life and after they retired, it was enough for them to help me to buy a car. And I would like to indicate once again that a simple calculation as to the possible pension of my father for several years says that the sums of these 200,000 hryvnias or else are wrong, because they get around 100,000 a year. Okay, it's clear. We are going further. 2017. In 2017, you acquired a flat with a surface of over 80 square meters, and the price is 890,000 hryvnias. And according to your information, the money was provided by your parents in the amount of 150,000, and then for the next 18 months you were paying monthly installments to finish to pay for the apartment. And according to the same state register of natural person taxpayers, for the period from 1998 up until 2016, the income of your father was over 250,000 hryvnias, and your mother had no income. Out of this sum, we have to deduct the assistance your father provided to buy the car in 2006, 2011, and 2014. We do not understand what is the source of money to buy the apartment. Thank you for the question. In the context of this question, I would like to add that the sum you indicated, 150,000 hryvnias, it's participation of my parents in the purchase of this apartment, and I should refer to my previous explanation to clarify where my parents took the money to help me. As I already said, from 1974 until the year 2000, my father was a serviceman serving in different units, in particular under the Security Service of Ukraine. And as I already said, this salary was probably not enough to make some savings. Nevertheless, the countries he worked in allowed him to save some money. In addition, he acquired some property he sold to have the savings. And my mother, who has economic background, who is economist, also knows how to make savings. I mean that the money my parents gave me as assistance to buy the apartment, to buy the parking lot, to buy the cars you already named, the money were not only taken from the salary and from the pension, I mean the salary partly reflected in the state registers, but also using the savings they managed to accumulate throughout their professional activities, and also using the money they inherited or the property they inherited from their own parents. So in any case, it's not the money that appeared at some point of time. This is the money they accumulated. Can you prove it with some types of documents? For example, excerpts from the banking account. Thank you for the question. And Actually, I reached out to my parent with this question. I asked for additional confirmation or information. They explained that they had never had such a need. Okay, don't repeat yourself. You already said that. We already heard it. We already heard the position of your parents. It's clear. The same year of 2017, similar situation, you purchased a parking space with an area of 13.4 square meters worth 280,000 hryvnias, and according to your explanations, your parents provided around 70,000 hryvnias to buy this parking space, and according to the data about your father's income, which was not convincing. Do you have the same explanation here? Thank you, dear members of the advisory group. I wanted to draw your attention to this, to the sum of my mother's pension for a month. Of course, it doesn't characterize her income for 5 or 10 years. It's a minimum pension. That's why I'm saying that the figures you get from the state register do not reflect completely the previous financial state of my parents. Why does it happen so? I don't know. You already said it, and you provided a written explanation. We remember about it, but once again, as far as I understand, you don't have any documents to prove it. No. Ivan Volodymyrovich, as of 2017, you were 29 years old, and you were still supported financially by your parents. You didn't have your own income. Thank you for the question. Since the year 2000 until the 2003, I was getting my PhD degree, and then I was also working in a legal firm as an assistant. And then I was working at the university. In 2011, I defended my dissertation. I was holding a position of professor. I had an income, but not enough to purchase these facilities, right? That's a different story. Up until 30 years old, I was living with my parents, and for this period, I had a dream to buy my own property, my own apartment. So I was saving the money I was earning to buy later my own apartment and to be independent from my parents. I got it. Let's start discussing the apartment you finally purchased in 2021 with the area of 87 square meters worth 3,463,653 hryvnias, which is approximately 130,000 US dollars. What money did you purchase this apartment for? In 2021, I sold the apartment which I owned in Kharkiv, and if I'm not mistaken, I sold it for around 3 million, and it was enough to buy an apartment in Kiev, and I had some more money for repairs in this apartment in Kiev. Ivan Volodymyrovich, the purchase of a property by your parents should have been of less interest for us, but following your answers to previous questions, we get that your parents helped you a lot. And I should also say that in addition to the assistance to you, your father, for the period from 2005 up until 2019, purchased enough property for himself. For example, in 2005, he bought a vehicle Subaru Outback of the model of 2005. In 2008, your father bought Mercedes-Benz, once again a model of 2008, so it was a new car. In 2019, your father purchased a Land Rover Discovery Sport car of 2019. So it was a completely new car. Later, before that, actually, in 2013, your mother purchased a parking lot. So your parents are wealthy enough. It's a pity that it was not proved with documents, that you didn't manage to prove it with any documents. Ivan Volodymyrovich, the next questions will be related to the declarations you filed as a person who performs the state functions. For the period of 2012 up until 2022, there have been mistakes in the declarations, and it is related to the salary you received at the Yaroslav Mudry National Law University, as well as regarding the amount of your salary received as the Kyiv Regional Center of the National Academy of Legal Sciences of Ukraine, the amount of your wife's salaries in the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, as well as the National University of Kyiv Mohyla Academy, where your wife also works. Regarding the area of the apartment, regarding the property rights of your family members, regarding your property right to the real estate, what was wrong? What was the problem? You are applying for the position of the judge of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine. You cannot lack any understanding of the attention we will show to your declarations, to your expenses. Why weren't you diligent enough with the filing of declarations? Why were there so many mistakes? Didn't you resort to some assistance of consultants to clarify the norms of filing the declarations to avoid these mistakes? Thank you for the question. It is true, there were enough mistakes while filing the declarations, as you already indicated. I would like to say that until 2019 I was a professor and I was filing declarations only when I was participating in competitions. Of course, it doesn't say that you can make mistakes if you are a professor, but I had no practice to develop the skills of declaring. After the year of 2019, there was also a number of mistakes, and first of all, I would tell about the mistake about the use of the apartments we were using. As far as I understand, if I indicate a place of residence and a place of registration in the declaration, and if I indicate that we indeed reside there, and if I say that it is my property, or I use it according to the agreement, it also means that my family also have a right to use it. But it appears that was a mistake. In case if you are appointed to the position of a judge of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, do we have any grounds to think that you will further avoid these kinds of mistakes? Yes, there is light in the end of the tunnel. Dear colleagues, there were mistakes when I filed declaration, and several times the National Agency of Prevention of Corruptions were pointing to these mistakes, but they are rather technical. Excuse me, we don't have enough time. You confirm that there is your guilt, and you assure that there is light in the end of the tunnel. Now, I'm saying that the last verification said that in the last declaration there was no mistakes. Congratulations, we got it. The next question. For the period of 2020 to 2023, you committed 31 violation of traffic rules, 2 cases of violations of parking rules, 16 cases were violations of it was non-payment of parking lot. How can a candidate to this position avoid payment for parking? 16 cases. What was the reason? Thank you for the question. I will probably start from the end. Dear members of the advisory group, I heard you asked the similar questions to the previous candidates. How would they themselves assess their conduct? I would say that if I were at your place, I would also have doubts, and I would like to have explanations how it could have happened and how the candidate wants to describe his attitude to the violations of the traffic rules, in particular the non-payment. I would like to explain and say that all of these violations were happening at the same address. It is the address of my working place. Boris Hrynchenko 1 is the center of the city of Kyiv, and it is very difficult to find a parking lot there. We understand it, we know it. We should also park in Kyiv city, but failure to pay for the parking, you can pay online for the payment. You can just go to the app Kyiv Digital and pay for the parking without even leaving your car. In 16 cases, you failed to pay. Why? Dear members of the advisory group, we are speaking about the 3 years. It's approximately 600 working days. And in most cases, I would come to my working place, I would find a parking lot, I would go to the app and pay for the parking. I would go to work and in the end of the day, I would leave this place. That's how the 600 days were going on. But there were different cases. There is a human factor. Sometimes you'd come to a working place and work for half an hour to park your car. You're in a rush and I thought I would go to the same app and probably I would meet someone on my way to a working place and I would fail to pay for the parking rules. Ivan Volodymyrovich, if we understand you correctly, it was not a deliberate violation. As you said, it was a human factor. Out of the 600 days, there were cases where you failed to pay. I would like to excuse myself for the fact that we need to discuss it. It's true, there were cases like that, and I was indeed paying these tickets. But I would like to add that it was solved. This issue was addressed in a centralized way. We finally have enough parking spaces, and now this problem is already solved. No problem with parking. Great. And the declarations are also filled correctly now, and the last tickets were paid. That's the right way to go. Congratulations, Ivan Volodymyrovich. In January 2009, you got a certificate to practice law. In July 2019, you suspended it. At the same time, in March 2019, a list of lawyers was published and stating that you failed to pay the regular contributions as an attorney. Please explain why, as a member of this body, didn't you pay this contribution? Thank you for this question. It's true that I didn't pay the contribution back then. It happened so that I wasn't practicing law and I was not following the changes that were happening in terms of my certificate to practice law. It was the period when I changed my place of residence, so the information, the reminders that I had to pay this contribution were coming to my previous address. I didn't get them, and after that I learned that I was brought to administrative responsibility, and for 6 months my certificate to practice law was suspended. I just learned about it.
Mr. Ivana Volodymyrovna, you for 10 years you are a lawyer. You don't remember that you should pay these contributions each year? If I had had legal practice, I would have understood it. But if I don't do that, my practice is just in the fact that once a year I am reminded about this contribution and I do it. And that time it was misunderstanding, so what I came to suspend the act of my constitutional, my certificate, lawyer certificate, and I said that there was disciplinary act. So here in Kharkiv region, this disciplinary act was for this case that you haven't paid the annual contribution. Yes, this is my fault. And this is, I forget about it, and it doesn't cancels my necessity to pay this contribution. That time I just forgot to do this. That's why when I was brought for the disciplinary accountability, I agreed to it. And I said sorry to my colleagues, to other lawyers, because at that period I was the chair of the department of the bar in educational process, and I had very good relationship, and it was really very inconvenient for me for this case. Mr. Ivan Volodymyrovich, you are a scientist. You developed like a scientist, and you are a doctor of juridical sciences, and then you decided to become a practitioner. In 2016, you took part in one selection procedure for the Supreme Court. Then, in 2022, you applied to the Competition Commission for selection of the candidates for positions of members for the High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine. Then, in July 2022, you applied for the competition for selecting candidates for positions of members of the HCJ under the Ukrainian president's quota. And in 2023, you also held a scientific quota. Now, you submit your candidacy to the Constitutional Court. So, can you explain your motivation for participating in many quite diverse competitions and to leave your academic career? So what attracts you here? Thank you for this question. So my scientific activity attracts me. I am longing for practical experience. Since 2020, I have done research in judiciary sector, and also my PhD thesis was and my doctorate thesis was dedicated to the judiciary system and investigation of the European Union. So when you become a scientist, when you just work in the sector of the structure of judiciary system, interaction of judiciary power with other branches of power, and you have some suggestions for the legislation, and you see that the legislation develops in other direction. We know that there have been a lot of stages of the judicial reform, and we can't say that all of them were successful. So in the end, you want not only to write about it in your scientific publications, but try to implement it in practice. That's why I express my interest for the Supreme Court, for the High Qualification Commission of Judges, and for the position of a judge of Constitutional Court. But I am forced to drive your attention to the fact that according to the amendments in 2016 to the Constitution of Ukraine, since then the Constitutional Court is not the part of the judicial power bodies. This is a separate body. So you want to discover and to research the judiciary system, but now you apply for the Constitutional Court. So why you are attracted of this position? Why you decided to try your forces properly in this competition? Thank you for your question. Here I can divide it in two things. The first one is academic interest and the implementation of legislation. If we talk about the implementation of legislation as it is, yes, Constitution says that the Constitutional Court is a separate body. It is not under the judiciary system. There is a separate law, and there are lots of different differences, and even its structure says that it is completely different. But as I studied the prosecution, bar, and rule of law, I know that there is rule of law, there is justice, and all these terms, they have their characteristics, and the justice can be performed only by the courts. And if we implement this justice to the Constitutional Court, we see that all these characteristic traits are attributed also to the Constitutional Court. This is my scientific position that can be criticized, that can be confirmed, not confirmed, supported, not supported. But in the framework of my scientific work, this is my conclusion. There is a desire to have it as a separate body, but if we talk about the implementation of justice, it is really very relevant and very similar to the other courts. We see that the Constitutional Court is not under the guidance of judicial power, but it is a judicial body. Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions from the experts of AGE? You raised an issue and the topic, and I want to ask you a question to understand how much would you like to enhance the constitutional control in Ukraine. Can you please answer when was the trial to establish a constitutional control in Ukraine? I will try to say that since the adoption of the Constitution of Ukraine, because before the adoption of the Constitution of Ukraine, we didn't have any similar bodies who performed such functions. I won't go in depth of the analysis of the Soviet times. There was something similar that we could say that there was something similar as the organ of constitutional jurisdiction or constitutional court, but it was another body. As for the Constitutional Court, okay, it's enough. Thank you. But it was the year 1987. I agree to you that such a body existed in Soviet times, but analyzing its powers, I would like to remind you, it can be a mistake, but as far as I remember, it didn't have any possibility to cancel norms of the law if they are recognized as unconstitutional. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions of the AGE group? If there are no questions, we are ready to wrap up the interview. And as it has been stated, you are given 5 minutes of time for your closing remark. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you so much. Dear members of the advisory group of experts, what I would like to say in the framework of my closing statement, I'm an optimistic person and I do believe in my country. Studying the legislation of Ukraine, I come to the conclusion that we have quite a good legislation. We have quite good laws. We have wonderful wonderful constitution, wonderful laws about the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, about the rule of law and status of judges. But I think that it could be even better if we presented less changes. But the changes and amendments that we do, they improve the situation. And I have an idea about the fact that our legislation is quite a good one, even in comparison with the European countries. And sometimes I think that remarks to our legislation, they are not always correct. And very often our norms and bylaws, they function in a very good way. And in my view, the problem is the fact that we have something with the law or about the constitutional courts, about the rule of law, or about the constitution, but it is about people who implement these bylaws. And here we have a selection procedure for a position of a judge of the Constitutional Court with a very difficult conditions. And these conditions are really much more difficult than they had been before. We understand why there are all these complications, because we want to have very good check of the integrity and other competences. So not to be embarrassed by the decisions taken by the Constitutional Court that had been in the past. So taking into account all these things, I think that I can perform the duties of a judge of the Constitutional Court regarding all the facts that I have stated. This is complex and difficult because a lot of requisites are needed, like age, background, etc., and not to be ashamed of the decisions taken. But from other point of view, it's not so difficult, because if you act in an honest way, if you follow all the principles about impartiality, objectivity, etc., then it will be the only solution. These are the arguments that I have had when I took this moral decision to take part in this election procedure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Ivan Volodymyrovich, for your answers. So, dear colleagues, the interview with the candidate for the position of a judge of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine, Ivan Volodymyrovich Nazarov, is closed.